Tom sat at the kitchen table, staring into the swirling depths of his morning coffee, trying to make sense of the strange new ability he had developed. For the past few weeks, an eerie sensation had settled into his life, a quiet hum, like static, that turned into something far more unsettling. He had begun hearing thoughts. It started subtly at first. He could hear faint whispers in crowded rooms, not loud enough to make out individual words, but enough to understand emotions. When his boss, smiling, had told him, "Good work," Tom had felt the sting of jealousy emanating from a coworker nearby. It was unnerving but manageable. That was until the whispers became clearer, until he could focus on someone and hear what they were truly thinking. Tom had tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe it was a form of intuition, some deeper empathy manifesting. But last night, lying in bed beside his wife, Rachel, he had heard her thoughts so vividly, as if they were his own. He hadn't meant to pry. The ability seemed to take over without his control. What he heard chilled him to the bone. "I have to be careful. Tom can't find out about Jared." Jared, a name that reverberated through his mind, laced with guilt and longing. Tom had heard everything in that one whispered thought. His wife, the woman he had spent the last decade building a life with, was hiding something. And now, Tom knew exactly what. His heart pounded in his chest, and he felt the familiar sting of betrayal slowly creeping up his spine. Rachel was having an affair. He was sure of it. There were no words spoken, no secret messages to uncover, but the thoughts were enough to confirm his worst fear. He sat frozen in bed last night, afraid to even move or breathe, as he listened to the scattered thoughts that fluttered through her mind like broken shards of glass. "When can I see him again? I can't keep doing this, but I miss him." The words kept replaying in Tom's head as he tried to steady his breath in the kitchen that morning. Rachel had kissed him goodbye just hours earlier, her usual smile plastered on her face, but now everything felt like a lie. He had debated confronting her immediately, but what would he say? "Hey, Rachel, I can hear your thoughts, and I know you're seeing someone else." It sounded ridiculous. Even if she believed him, how could he trust her after this? A knot formed in his stomach, and he realized that the worst part wasn't just the betrayal. It was that she hadn't trusted him enough to be honest. The house was eerily quiet when Rachel returned that evening. Tom watched her carefully as she placed her purse on the counter and kicked off her heels. She looked as she always did, calm, composed, unaware of the storm brewing inside him. "How was work?" Tom asked, his voice steady, masking the emotions boiling beneath. "Same as always," she replied, flashing him a quick smile before busying herself with dinner preparations. Tom's mind raced. He wanted to hear her thoughts again, but he couldn't just listen on command. The ability seemed to work sporadically, at its own whim. Frustration gnawed at him, but he didn't want to push her into revealing anything just yet. He needed more information, more evidence to confront her properly. That night, as they sat together watching TV, Tom couldn't help but steal glances at her, wondering if she'd slip, if she'd think about Jared again. For a moment, he doubted himself. What if he had misunderstood? What if Jared wasn't who he thought? Maybe it was an innocent friendship, something Tom had overblown in his mind. But as he let his guard down, the telepathy kicked in once again. Does he know? He seems different lately. Maybe I'm being paranoid. The thought shot through Tom's mind like a jolt of electricity. Rachel was questioning him. She had noticed his change in behavior, and her internal suspicion only deepened his own. He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. How could she sit there next to him, acting as if nothing had changed, while her thoughts were consumed with someone else? The next morning, Tom decided he couldn't wait any longer. He needed to confront her, but not head-on. He needed to know everything before he laid all his cards on the table. That afternoon, when Rachel left for an errand, Tom did something he never thought he'd resort to. He went through her phone. At first, there was nothing unusual. Messages with her friends, coworkers, nothing out of the ordinary. But as he scrolled further back, his stomach dropped. There, hidden in an obscure thread, were texts from Jared. The conversations were vague, careful not to leave any damning evidence, but they didn't need to be explicit. Tom knew what he was seeing. His heart sank further when he saw a message sent just 2 days ago. Can't wait to see you again. Same time. The truth hit him like a freight train. Jared wasn't just a fleeting thought, he was real, and their affair was ongoing. That evening, Tom sat on the couch, waiting. When Rachel walked through the door, he could barely look at her. His hands trembled, his heart pounded, but he knew the time had come. "Rachel, we need to talk," he said, his voice quieter than usual. She froze for a second, her eyes searching his face. "What is it?" Tom felt the weight of his words pressing on him, but before he could speak, he heard her thoughts, clear and panicked. "Oh no, he knows. He must know about Jared." His heart shattered. "I know about Jared," Tom whispered, his voice breaking. Rachel's face drained of color. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her eyes wide with panic. "I've heard your thoughts, Rachel. I don't know how, but I can hear them. I've heard everything about Jared, your affair, all of it." For a moment, Rachel just stood there, stunned into silence. Then, her face crumpled, and she collapsed into a chair. "I didn't want this to happen," she sobbed. "I never wanted to hurt you." Tom's chest tightened. "But you did. You hid this from me. You lied to me. How could you?" Rachel buried her face in her hands. "It wasn't supposed to be this way. Jared was just. I don't know. He was there when things between us got hard. I didn't plan on falling for him." "Falling for him?" Tom repeated, his voice hollow. "How long, Rachel? How long have you been lying to me?" Her sobs grew louder, and she shook her head. "A few months." "I don't know. It just happened." Tom stood there, his whole world crumbling around him. The woman he had loved for so long, the one he had built his life with, had betrayed him in the most intimate way. And worse, she hadn't stopped. Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. Tom felt a deep sense of loss wash over him. He had never imagined this kind of pain, this kind of betrayal. He didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he finally said, his voice shaking. "But I can't keep living like this, hearing your thoughts and knowing you're thinking of someone else." Rachel wiped her tears, her face a mix of guilt and despair. "I'll end it with Jared. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. To fix us." Tom stared at her, his heart torn in two. Could he ever trust her again? Could he ever look at her the same way, knowing what he knew now? "I don't know," he whispered, turning away. "I just don't know." As Tom walked out of the room, Rachel's sobs echoed behind him, but this time there were no thoughts, only silence, and the heavy weight of a broken heart.